Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
May 10th, 2018.
And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
Chocolate's working its magic, working its way around my neurons. Okay, so family was once sacred in America, and then along came the sexual revolution. And as a result of that, the war against the family took off in high gear. And there was a time when family was sacred in America. Under Ronald Reagan, remember, family values, remember all that those antiquated days? And then along came the Marxists under Barack Obama, although he was married and had two lovely children. He represented the modern Marxist, someone who towed, let us say, who straddled both lines. Family, anti-family, America, anti-America, Christian and Muslim. The man was a man in between. You didn't know where he stood, and very often he stood with those adversaries of ours. So I want to talk now about the world that we're living in right now, and maybe it's too, not talk showy enough, but I think it's a great topic, which is the war against the family. I think this topic has not been talked about at all for years. It was banned from the media. When have you last seen real family values discussed? It's mocked. There's a show on TV, I think, on CBS called Family Values, which mocks family, right? Isn't that what it does? Isn't that typical of what the Marxists do in the media, those who make the tens of millions of dollars a year? They mock family. It's stock and trade. So let's start with some general. I'm in front of a blackboard now and have a piece of chalk. Let's just take some ideas and throw them up on the blackboard. Religious people, family-oriented. Non-religious people, those who mock religion, not family-oriented. Think of the late-night comedians who pretend to be family men, but they're not. They hate family. Then we have the left versus the right. The right generally supports religion, supports family. The left supports those who mock religion, and then they mock family. The left says that there are reasons to not have children. They say marriage makes men and women less free. They say that children are a burden. They don't see children as a blessing. They see them as a burden. They stand between them and a new dress or a new shirt, a new dance. Then they insist that there's no sexual differentiation, even though all of biology will prove otherwise, whether it be a flea or a mouse. Sexual differentiation is a part of biology. Everybody knows that. And yet the small number of people who are confused with their sexual orientation, and it's a minuscule number of people who are confused, by the way, are now narrating the narrative that sexual differentiation is a fiction. These ideas are not really new. They're part of the anti-family movement that emerged in the last 150 years. And according to a Catholic theologian named Ryan N.S. Topping, in his great article from 2013, The Long War Against the Family, he says the first wave against the family was the Marxist contribution. The second was the eugenicist. And the third is the fruit of recent gender theorists. Now, what does it have to do with talk radio? Is this too far afield of why the left shuns the family, why the right embraces the family? In many ways, it ties into yesterday's show about religion. And I know it was a very popular program. I got a lot of people who listen regularly who said that it was one of the most interesting shows that I've ever done, where I talked about Orthodox Jewish people, the prayer book, what the Jewish prayers say about gender, sexuality. I don't use the word gender, by the way. I use the word sex. Gender is the wrong word. When someone says, this is my gender, they're using the wrong word. It should be, this is my sex, male or female. That's not their gender, that's their sex. And it's a purposeful misuse of the term and of the word, by the way. It's to confuse you. But let's just put a few other ideas up there. How come societies that are even macho societies, even violently macho societies, are all strongly family-oriented? If you look at south of the border, Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, you look into the areas of South America, whether it be Colombia, the family is the key, the brick of society. The family unit. The church is central to all of these societies, notably the Catholic Church. It is the glue, the cement that keeps the family unit together. And now look at America, where we are today under this Pope. Look what's going on in this country today because of the illiberalism of the psychotic, stealth Marxist wearing the Pope's hat in the Vatican. Take a look at where the world is today. It's all part of the progressive cultural meltdown of the family, and that's because if you melt the family down, according to the Marxists, you can then melt down capitalism. And they think we will move into some ideal world that existed before capitalism, into some sort of tribal society where there will be a primitive communism, no private property, and there'll be no restrictions on sexual relationships, and everyone will just have a wonderful time having sex like mink, rutting everywhere. Why not do it in the road? Break it all down. That's what will happen in their mind. But it doesn't work that way. Ask yourself if you know anyone who lived in the Soviet Union in the ideal state of what happened under Marxism there. Well, maybe that's something you don't want to talk about. There are other topics. If you want to call on it, 855-47282. I think we've done the Benedict McShane. I think that's enough of him. Pence on the Mueller investigation. It's time to wrap it up. Good for him. Teacher was accused of promoting a homosexual agenda. Now she's suing. Oh, this is a great story out of Texas. In her art classes, she took little children in early elementary schools, and while teaching art, she told them about her lesbianism. She talked about her, quote, wife, Julie, and they fired her. They said, you can't do that to the little children. You can't teach elementary students your sexual orientation because it's not appropriate for them, some parents said. Well, she sued the school, and we'll see where that goes. And that's what's going on in our society today, is things like that. In the big picture, the Farm Bill, not interested. Trump attacks Chuck Schumer. Not that interesting. Israel and Iran on the brink of war. That was yesterday. I don't know really what happened today. I mean, I think that war ended with a few rockets. The Iranian Hezbollah fired rockets into Israel. The Iron Dome stopped some of them. The others were didn't do anything. So maybe that was just a little, shot in the dark. We really don't know. I do know this. It's going to heat up over the weekend because tomorrow, actually Saturday, the Trump contingent goes to Israel. They're leaving on Saturday. And they will be making the announcement at 6 a.m. Pacific time on Monday. It would be 9 a.m. East Coast time. There's going to be a speech from Jerusalem. I actually spoke to someone who was involved with the speech, and I think it's going to be an earth-moving speech. It's an historic moment. And I don't know if I can tell this story in its entirety, but I will give you some broad outlines. Again, when I was in the White House, yes, you've heard it before, now you're mad at me because you weren't there. But when I was in the White House with the president, he actually said to me, Michael Savage, he said, well, on May whatever, we're opening the embassy in Jerusalem. Should I go? You know what my answer was? Take a guess what my answer was to the President of the United States. I said, I'm not sure. Let me think about it. I didn't just shoot out an answer like I'm on the radio. And then a few minutes later, I actually said, President Trump, moving the embassy to Jerusalem was controversial enough. I don't think you need to be there as part of it. And almost as I finished my sentence, he had said, you know what, I'm not going to go. My mind works in strange ways. I've seen it happen before. No, he didn't need to go. But, I could ask the other question, was it wise to even move the embassy to Jerusalem? Because I'm not so sure it was so wise to do it. It's historically very powerful, but it's going to provoke tremendous rage in parts of the Arab world. Now, that's an interesting statement because not all of the Arab world is against moving the embassy to Jerusalem. Do you know who's in favor of it? Oh, some small countries like Saudi Arabia and some of the other major Gulf states are totally in favor of it, and they're on the side of Israel because the Jewish state has wisely positioned themselves to be on the side of the Sunni, let us say, bloc versus the Shia bloc run by Iran. Now, you know, this little war that's heating up between Israel and Iran is very interesting to me because you'd think Russia would come out strongly on the side of Iran and make threats, but they didn't. Do you know why? I figured it out last night. I figured out why Russia's not making too much noise. What was what was one of the unintended or intended consequences of this little skirmish? What went up? Oil prices. What has that done for Russia? It's given their economy a boost. So, in other words, Putin wins either way. If you think about it, no one's actually analyzed that. You'll see it tonight on my student show on Fox News. He's a very able student. I like the young man. They take good notes, and it appears tonight. And he looks so earnest. I really appreciate his earnestness as he repeats his teacher's insights. It's wonderful. They create the graphics for him on Fox. Then the cross comes on and repeats it again. It's fabulous to be the show prep for much of the late night Fox News hosts. It's wonderful to see your ideas because, like Lao Tzu, you know, he said it doesn't matter if you got credit for your ideas. What matters is that your ideas are thought about. That's all that matters to me at this point in my life. But listen to what I just said. In other words, why is Putin not making such a big deal about Israel? Because the little skirmish between Iran and Israel has driven oil prices up. And Russia's economy was a little weakened because of the Democrats with the sanctions and the this and the that. Well, now they're going to be rolling in a little more money because the oil prices are up. They produce a lot of oil out of the Caspian region. Did you know about that? I didn't know about that. Yeah, well, they're big oil producers. So it's a very interesting web, ladies and gentlemen of the Savage Nation. The world is an interesting spider web. And if you plunk one part of the web, that little plunk on one part of the web is felt all around the web. The whole web moves. If a fly hits a web over here, the whole web moves. Did you know that? So nothing is on its own anymore. Nothing is by itself. So in other words, there are unintended and intended consequences, and it could be that Russia actually likes the conflict, which is why they like the conflict and have said nothing about it. Look for that tonight on Fox News with Mr. Ernest. I'll be right back.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. May 10th, 2018.
24 minutes after the hour. I guess we're talking about family values and what happened to them and why they're melting down so rapidly. And it's by design, not by accident. The sexual revolution generated by a small percentage of the population has now infected the entire population, and as a result, children are no longer revered, they're reviled. After all, they stand in the way of a new shirt, a new pair of tight pants. They stand in the way of a new car. They stand in the way of an expensive vacation and a gold watch. Wouldn't you rather have a nice pair of jeans and a gold watch rather than a son? What do you need a son for? They vomit, they get diarrhea, they get sick, they cry. They need your help. You don't want to give a child anything like that. You're not a man. You're not a man. You're a sex machine. Isn't that what you are? Isn't that what God made you to be, a sex machine? WABC John on line 4. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Dr. Savage.
Yeah, go ahead. You're on the radio, John.
Hello, Dr. Savage.
You're on the radio. For God's sake, say it already.
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm in the car. All right, I want to make my observation in my lifetime as a vintage 1961 little brother in the baby boomer organization.
Right.
That our culture has gone from Father Knows Best to Oprah Says.
Well, actually, you said from Father Knows Best to Oprah Knows Best, and you win a copy of God, Faith, and Reason for that. I love it. From Father Knows Best to Oprah Knows Best. I love it. I think that's great. Thanks for calling from the car. Very funny. WABC, Linda, line 6. What's your opinion?
Hi. I just want to say one thing. For years it's been going on that all the shows these dummies put on, all these brilliant writers, they don't make the family look stupid. They make the father or the man in the family look stupid. And
right. Every commercial shows a weak white man dropping food, crashing into a glass window, and the woman is in charge, right?
Exactly. And they always make the man look like an idiot. And for years now, do you know I'm sure you remember, there was a columnist named Ann Landers. And years ago, she did a anonymous survey for women of mothers who had children. And as long as it was anonymous, she asked them, would they, if they had to do over again, would they have children? And they, mostly said no.
Yeah, but that's a fake column. You're going to believe Ann Landers? You actually believe that?
I believe it because I know a lot of people, they love their children, but they don't like mothers. There are responsibilities.
Well, you're raising a very important question, which I could raise on the radio right now, because I'll open it up to that. I'll ask mothers, if you had to do it all over again, would you get married and have children? Wouldn't that be an interesting question, Linda?
As long as the children weren't around and it really was really anonymous.
Yeah, all right. Well, no, you made a good point, so I'll open it up again on the Savage Nation if you're listening to the show. It'll be a skewed audience and a skewed response. If women who are listening to this show are married or were married and have children, if you had a choice to do it all over again, would you live just for your freedom, or would you do it all over again and put up with all the suffering, the husband, the children, or would you live for yourself? What would you do? How would you feel about that? And then look ahead to the end of your life when you're older. Is there any reason to be alive when you're older if you don't have family? Tell me what you're living for. Because I can't figure it out. I've thought about this. Let's say you're over 50 and you have no children. Tell me what you're alive for. To go golfing? What is the reason for living without a family? How does the continuum work? You want to be the end chain of your evolutionary chain? You want to be the end of it? You want to abruptly end the evolutionary chain of your DNA? You want to be responsible for committing evolutionary DNA? Maybe some of you should. Maybe you should end the evolutionary chain of your DNA.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
She looked at my palm and she made a magic sign. She said, what you need is love potion number 9.
All right, so we're moving into a weird place on the Savage Nation. I don't know how we got here. We started with McCain and we got to the Marxism and family, the meltdown of the family and how it's by design, not by accident. And now we come to this point in the show where we're going to get some interesting callers. I could see it happening already because I challenged my audience and I said, mainly to the women, because the women are the ones who deal with most of the issues with children, is if you had to do it all over again, would you have children? I didn't say get married, by the way, because many women could do without their husbands. They just like the children. But nevertheless, okay, I'm not trying to be too facetious here, just a little facetious. I have said to you before, because I'm an older man with children and a grandchild, thank God, I have no idea why I'd be living at this point if I had no children and no grandchild. What would be the point? There'd be no reason to live. Why am I alive? To go golfing? I don't golf. To sit in another restaurant? I don't like it. To stuff my face? Big deal. So people say, well, with children, let's say a person had 4, 5, 6 children, which is unusual in this country. Some had more. I'd like to hear from people who had large families and everything went wrong. The husband left them. One of the children became a drug addict. Another child became this and went to prison. Everything went wrong in your life. Would you do it again? Or would you live only for yourself? So we're talking now about suffering because I have my own opinion on this, which is that unless you're willing to suffer, you cannot live. Suffering is one of the most important lessons in life, and we all suffer. Mainly psychologically, we suffer. All of us suffer. It's part of the human condition. And yet we deny that suffering should be part of the human condition. We are lied to by the New Age movement. We are lied to by the fictions of our media, that there are truly happy people and happiness, eternal happiness is possible. In fact, the norm when it isn't, which is why so many of the actors, the phonies, are on drugs, and in rehab all the time because they're portraying a fake universe that they know doesn't exist. Certainly not in their lives. Most actors are troubled, tortured people. And God bless them, that's where they go into acting, which is to get it out of their system. But they all are tortured in one way or the other, as are all of us. We're all tortured. You're not tortured? So one of my favorite philosophers is Khalil Gibran, who has written, out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars. I remember reading him in college when you lost a girlfriend, right? You turned to Khalil Gibran for your answer. And I remember one of the things at that time on Joy and Sorrow, I'll never forget, he was so popular at Queens College. We all passed around our Khalil Gibran. We loved him. And he wrote on Joy and Sorrow, your joy is your sorrow unmasked. Boy, did we love that when a girl left us. Right? When you saw her with another guy, we went to Gibran. You know, we were pretty clever guys. I mean, we had philosophy. We didn't just turn to stupidity. Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that has given you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, nay, sorrow is the greater. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. Verily, you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty are you at standstill and balanced. When the treasure keeper lifts you to weigh his gold and silver, needs must your joy or your sorrow rise or fall. Very beautiful poem by the philosopher Khalil Gibran, who suffered immensely in his life. If I remember correctly, he was a morphine addict at the time. His pain was overwhelming, as were many artists, and still are many artists in constant pain, which doesn't mean that people who use drugs are all artists. Please, I've heard that before. Nor does it mean that all artists must suffer, because I remember reading Aldous Huxley, who liberated me of that thoughtful burden, when he said that most people think that they create because of their neurosis, or their suffering, or their pain. But Huxley liberated me when he said, no, the good artists create in spite of their suffering, in spite of the neurosis. In other words, there was a long period in history, in modern American history, where people thought they had to be the suffering artist. And so they would induce the sense of being the suffering artist. The drinking, the smoking, the excessive alcoholism in the age of Kerouac, for example. That was an example to show the torture, the tormented soul. But, only by transcending the torment can you become an artist. Can you actually do anything of any great value? So, anyway, that's a separate story. We're talking about joy and sorrow, but it's bringing back to the family issue. For the younger people listening to the show, I'm asking women, mainly women, would you do it again? Or would you live only for yourself? Would you just follow the entertainment industry, which has you believe that you're living only for your own pleasure? Look at these stupid reality shows. Look at the low-class women with the blown-up lips, with the fake bodies, the blown-up faces. They look like carnival creatures to me. And I think that's one of the appeals of these housewife shows, is the fact that they look like Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey freak show. The fake behinds, the fake this, the fake that, the blown-up lips, everything fake on their bodies. The fake acts about this and that. It's like a freak show, isn't it? They're not real. But what about you, Laura on WABC? Would you do it again? How many children did you have, Laura?
I have 6 children and an amazing husband, and I would definitely do it again. Maybe sooner.
How old were you when you had your first?
31. We got married when I was 28, and it was good because we were able to save money and plan for our family. But just my husband's amazing. It's the family. I had a wonderful mother and father and sisters, my whole family network, as well as my husband's. And I think it's choose wisely. it's what you choose.
But what about the children? What if some of the children went astray? Did any of them go off the mark?
Not well. My oldest is 20, my youngest is 9, and not so far. Faith is the center of our lives, and that's how they were raised. Very.
Oh, so you're a Christian who was very religious?
Right. And the kids know right from wrong. I mean, nowadays there's no moral compass for anyone. I mean, these guys know. And then they could go. They're still young. They could turn away. It wouldn't mean I wouldn't love them any less. I just pray for them more.
So I'm hearing from you that your religion keeps you going.
Oh, definitely. Because, without that, what purpose is there in life? I mean,
well, that's what you heard me say that, right?
Right. I mean, it's what purpose without your family? But for our faith, God forbid, just like Job, if God were to take, and I'm not one to quote the Bible, but I just look at what happened to him. If he were to take everything away from me, there'd be no reason to live other than my faith. And that's because God wants me to still persevere. He hasn't taken me yet.
But, Laura, would you agree with me that without suffering you cannot be a full human? That is part of the human condition. I mean, even with your happiness, with your faith, and with your family and your children, do you say that you suffer in your daily life through mental agonies occasionally?
Yeah, there's ebb and flow of it. I mean, I lost my mom when I was 18 and my dad just after we got married. So my kids don't know them, but they know them through our stories. And my sisters, I have 3 sisters that are very close with our family. And,
But during an average day, you don't suffer mentally over anything?
Just trying to do too much, maybe, but
Interesting. You're a lucky woman. You're a blessed person, Laura, and I think you're blessed because of your faith in God. And I thank you I'm going to send you God, Faith, and Reason. Thank you for calling. That's beautiful. I'm thinking of suffering because tomorrow I have to go to the dentist for an implant. It's not really the worst part of the implant procedure. I've had one done years ago. I had the bone put in. I pray to God. I mean, I've told him when he put the bone in a year ago, you make sure it's synthetic. I do not want a cadaver's bone in my jaw. And after the first one, I said, was it plastic? He said, no, it was cadaver. I said, damn it. I said I wanted plastic. So for all I know, they got the bone out of some homeless transvestite on the streets of San Francisco. I don't know. They say it's denuded of activity. How do I know what's inside the top jawbone now, years later? But the lower jaw, I know it's synthetic. And that was the worst part of it, inserting the bone. Now, a year later now, it's over a year. I've been putting it off. Tomorrow's not the bad part. They swab the gum, then they inject the gum, and then all you feel is like a torque wrench screwing the titanium base into your jawbone. It's kind of weird. It's like you feel like a lug nut. You yourself feel like a lug nut with a torque wrench in the dental chair. It's a weird feeling. And so I'm going to go in slightly sedated before I go in. I don't really want to have pain. I don't have to prove how macho I am. I don't really want to feel pain if I don't have to. So I asked for a little med before I go in. I'm going to be driven there. Then they'll inject. Then I'll come out. I won't be able to do the show. Maybe I should do the show tomorrow because I'm getting out before the show. That'd be funny. No, we have a fill-in, but I think I'm going to call in, Clint and Jim. And let's see if I can call in after the dental surgery and just report for duty to some extent. Knowing me, I'll probably want to do the show at some point. So I guess that's what I'm thinking about suffering right now because of the dental implant tomorrow. Well, we're running short of time, believe it or not. Here we are again. I mean, it's good. I must tell you that the chocolate was not good for my head. It gave me such a sugar rush, and now it's like, oh, my God, I got a headache from it. I never eat that stuff. Even this low glycemic stuff, it gets poisoned. I would have been better off with bad Chinese food. Why did I need to get that chocolate bar? I have no idea. I'm in kind of a fun mood today, and I hope you are as well. I hope you're enjoying the program. I'll be back in a moment to take your calls on all of these topics right here on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Tears on my pillow.
What a beautiful song.
In my heart, caused by you.
How come the girls don't sing this anymore today? Nothing is beautiful anymore. Everything's ugly. All the music is ugly. All the lyrics are ugly. Why is there no beauty anymore? I don't understand it. Where's the beauty gone in my world? Everything is garish, militant, and ugly. The arts are ugly. Nothing beautiful. So we're talking about on joy and sorrow. Your joy is your sorrow unmasked. The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? Here's a shocker. When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. Oh, who wants to go through it again? I read this Kahil Gibran on joy and sorrow. I want to become a Buddhist and feel nothing, which is what most of America has become, numb. Numb with drugs, numb with food, numb with fat, numb with television, numb with politics, numb with hatred, feeling nothing, feeling no love, no joy, no sorrow. It's amazing the country we're living in. Family values seem to be gone. I did a little thing today on family values so far, and to my knowledge, I do not know of a show that I can think of in recent time that has talked about family values. Most people in the media have been afraid to even talk about it for fear that they would offend those without families. They would offend those who are sexually ambivalent or confused. It's become a topic that is dangerous for the media. The only thing they talk about is, I guess hating America, hating Trump, hating religion, hating God, hating church, hating mother, hating father, hating the military, hating the police. That's become the norm of the numbskulls in the media. But I'm asking you another question, which is, if you had to do it all over again, would you have children, yes or no? Cassidy on WFJX in Virginia. Line 7, go ahead, please, your opinion.
Hi, Dr. Savage. I'm a new mom, so I'm not as seasoned as a lot of your listeners, but I would 1,000% have my son again if I had to. We weren't actually sure that we could have kids because I have a blood clotting disorder, so there was doctors telling me that if I did have him, that I wouldn't make it through. But, with faith and with prayer and with, being persistent.
See, again, it's another woman who has faith in God, despite her suffering, who would have a child again. I'm sending you God, faith, and reason. What a beautiful idea this was to talk about this, because I don't know who else is talking about it. But there are many people listening who probably in their hearts don't want to call a show, would say, I wouldn't have them again. I'd rather live for myself. I'd rather just be wild and free and crazy and never put up with that rotten husband that I had and that terrible child of mine who never sends me money and doesn't call. I don't know. But I'll continue this discussion when I come back right here on the Savage Nation.
Stop listening to the bombastic loudmouths on the radio. To hell with them.
Savage.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
John McShane. The McCain name was a glorious name in American military annals. The grandfather was a great man. The father was a great man. This guy was a putz from the get-go. Last in his class at Annapolis. Caused deaths on the aircraft carrier by hitting the wrong button and firing off Zuni missiles that almost sank an aircraft carrier. We can forgive him all of that because he suffered at the hands of the Vietnamese for 5 straight years as a hero. Trump was wrong to say he wasn't a hero, but in a certain way Trump was right when he said he prefers his heroes not to have been captured. He put it the wrong way. But let's put all of that aside and not argue over whether or not he's a hero. He is a hero. I couldn't have survived 5 years of being tortured by those bastards, could you? But the thing is, that was then, this is now. And I gave you a long example of another great American hero who turned on his own country. And that was Benedict Arnold. So now we have Benedict McShane, a turncoat who stands with the Demony. And the issue of talk radio. should talk radio be banned? You won't believe what's going on in England right now. How bad they have fallen, how far they have fallen as a nation. I have to find this article because I want to get it exactly right. In England, they're proposing a 6-year prison sentence for anyone who posts against gays or transgenders or Muslims. If I made this up, then damn me. But I'm not making it up. In England, the land of the Magna Carta, someone in Parliament is trying to pass a law which says that if you put down gays or transgenders or Muslims, you go to jail for 6 years. This is how far England has fallen. I'm proud to tell you I'm banned from England. Do you want that in America? Prison sentences for people who post against, let's say, any religion? That would make most of the people on late-night television capable, subject to prison sentence. All of them. Think of what you're saying. You want prison sentence for someone who says something against a religion? That would be the end of talk television at night, wouldn't it? All the wise guys, they'd be out of business. UK proposes 6-year prison sentence for online posts against religion or transgender. Breitbart. People promoting, quote, hostility towards a religion or the transgendered online could get sentences of up to 6 years in jail, especially if they have a large online audience, according to new proposals. Maybe John McCain would go along with that one. The so-called Sentencing Council for England and Wales has drafted changes to public order offenses, including anyone perceived as targeting online a, quote, protected characteristics, including, listen carefully, this is what's protected now: race, sex, disability, age, sexual orientation, religion or belief, pregnancy and maternity, and gender reassignment. This is what happens when you have psychotic minorities taking control of a country. They turn the country into a fascist dictatorship in the name of their status. This is very dangerous, especially in a land that gave us the Magna Carta, which led to our Bill of Rights. We're also talking about the Google demonstration of an assistant making an actual phone call that you're not going to believe. And I think that we should probably play that because it's so alarming when you hear about it. We know about sex dolls, and now you have voices that sound like human beings. Where will this end? How does it end? It doesn't end well. So let's listen to a Google assistant making a call from someone who wants to make a haircut appointment in clip 1.
So how can I help you?
Hi, I'm calling to book a woman's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd.
Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around?
At 12 p.m.
We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15.
Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.?
Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for?
Just a woman's haircut for now.
Okay, we have a 10 o'clock.
10 a.m. is fine.
Okay, what's her first name?
The first name is Lisa.
Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Great. Have a great day. Bye.
God, I wish she was my assistant. I wouldn't have to worry about headaches, family problems. She'd show up to work on time. She'd be cheerful every day. God, where do I get one of those? But on a non-comedic level, I want you to think very carefully about the voice that they have synthesized at Google and what this portends for the future. And now you know why you're addicted to Michael Savage. Because of all the voices in the media, and I include all of them, my voice is the most distinctive in the United States of America. Because I wasn't created in 2018 by the engineers at Google. On a side note, just for your scientific thinking, I was riding my bicycle this morning. It's pretty cold here in Northern California right now. It's inordinately kind of cold, and there's a cool wave across the country. So I usually think very clearly on a bicycle. And I saw new houses going up, and I saw there was a new law which says all houses in California have to have solar panels, which I think is a good idea, by the way. You know, less carbon emissions, less pollution. And I'm for clean air. But then I got to think about it. Wait a minute. Let's think about this for a minute, I thought as I'm on my bike. A solar panel absorbs the energy of the sun, which would normally hit the Earth and be absorbed by the crust of the planet, right? So I said, wait a minute, do solar panels have an effect on climate? I started to think as I pedaled along. And about a half a mile later, I said, wait a minute, do solar panels cause global cooling? I thought. And then when I got home, I Googled the question, and guess what I found? Yes, solar panels change the way sunlight is reflected and absorbed by the Earth. Any radiation solar panels absorb is not absorbed by the Earth. This leads to a cooling effect in the region surrounding the array. And they did simulations in the study, which assumed solar panel installations throughout the world's desert and urban areas. And guess what happened, all of you coolists and warmists? A 2 degrees Celsius regional cooling in the desert regions. But even worse, the cooling, because of the solar panels, was associated with a 20% decrease in precipitation in the deserts. Other slightly broader changes in precipitation and wind patterns also occurred as a result in the region surrounding the deserts. So all the do-gooders who are screaming that we have to have solar panels everywhere may have a good idea, but like all roads to hell, they're paved with good intentions. We may wind up destroying ourselves by over-solaring, by going over solar. By putting up too many solar panels, the radiation will not be absorbed by the Earth's crust, and then what happens? The Earth cools. Who are you going to blame then? Well, you can't blame anybody. You don't have to point fingers. It's just not thinking things through. It's called a rush to judgment. And unless you think things through, you often make mistakes. As many of you thought that Trump was the most evil man on the planet. Now he's got a meeting with Kim in Singapore, ending the threat, at least for now, of a nuclear war in the Korean Peninsula. Brought home hostages from Iran. All bad, right? All bad things. This is what happens when you don't think. We're talking about a number of things. Sadly, we're talking about Benedict McShame, a turncoat that now stands with the Demony. Demony is a new word that I created just for your listening pleasure on the Savage Nation. I don't know what more we can say about it. I mean, it's a bigger question. Should medically impaired members of Congress be forced to retire? Of course they should be. But how do you define medically impaired? That's the real question. And who will be the determinant? I would say a panel of 3 doctors. When a politician, doesn't matter which side they're on, starts to show signs of dementia or senility, as has been seen in the case of Nancy Pelosi for years now. It's just being covered up. I think that there needs to be a panel of 3 doctors in this field who can determine whether they're capable of conducting their affairs with some degree of rationality, because we're living in very dangerous times. This is not a textbook situation. Attacking America's defenses again. And then I talked about the family being attacked by the leftist media, and I touched on the Marxist perspective on the family. And before I go into that for a minute, the Marxist perspective on the bourgeois family, so-called, the nuclear family has been the targeted enemy of the left because their godfather, Karl Marx, told them that by taking apart the nuclear family, they can take apart capitalism. This is a very important subject for me, and it goes right to the religious discussion we had yesterday. All religious people are family people. All religious people know that it's encoded in their DNA, in their ancestry, and in the Bible from God himself to go forth, get married, and have a family. And so how do you destroy that if you're a Marxist? You start mocking the Catholic Church. You make a mockery of the Catholic Church. You mock Orthodox Jews if you're Woody Allen, if you're part of the Marxist structural conflict of society. And so, again, in a nutshell, the monogamous nuclear family emerged, according to the leftists, meaning Engels. The monogamous nuclear family, which has been mocked by the left since at least the 60s, emerged with capitalism. Before capitalism, the Marxists believed, traditional tribal societies were classless, and they practiced a form of primitive communism in which there was no private property. And that's what they tried to achieve in the Soviet Union. How did that work out for the Russian people? In ancient primitive societies, property was collectively owned, and there were no families as we know them. And they thought that tribal groups existed in a kind of promiscuous horde in which there were no restrictions on sexual relationships. They were dumb and they were wrong. Margaret Mead, one of the greatest phonies in the history of anthropology, who invented her major thesis, put forward the same exact salacious discussion of people in Samoa. The people in not Sonoma, the people in Samoa. I shouldn't mix up Sonoma with Samoa. Maybe the people in Sonoma are salacious, but the people in Samoa are not salacious. They're highly structured, highly organized, and very family-oriented in Samoa, but maybe not in Sonoma. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
So with McShane, I said, should medically impaired members of Congress be forced to retire? Benedict McShane is working for the Demony. Enough is enough. And in the Twitter exchange, someone wrote, there's nothing wrong with a senator who was once tortured by Viet Cong in Nam voting against confirmation of a known torturer to become director of CIA. Every American should hold our government to higher standard. God bless John McCain for taking a stand. My answer was this. Typical lib non-argument. You'd rather a suitcase nuke explode in a city than waterboard a terrorist. And I think that's settled the argument. We are not in a university setting where everything is just done in a laboratory. You have people who would blow you up, blow your family up, blow your mother up, blow your father up, blow your infant up. And I say I don't care about waterboarding them if it's down to that. I'd pull their fingernails out if I could find out where the bomb was. I have no idea where people come up with these ideas that we should have a higher standard. Those days of higher standards ended with the advent of Wahhabism. It went out the window. We're not living in a dream world anymore. Benedict McShane, a turncoat that stands with the Demony, in his last days has decided no longer wants to be remembered for the war hero he was, but as a turncoat against his country, a Demony of the people. His opposition to one of the most loyal and knowledgeable people nominated to head the CIA, someone who has worked in the agency for 30 years, someone who was responsible for foiling terror plots after 9/11, will go down as one of his final acts of treason against his nation. This man, the so-called maverick, has done more to side with Democrats on policies against this nation than any other Republican, and all to the detriment of the country. His corruption of character dates back to the 80s with the Keating 5 scandal, which allowed his family to profit from the dealings of Charles Keating, while McCain was pressuring regulators to back off of him. Later, McCain turned on President Bush, voting against both his tax cuts, and joined Democrats on what seemed to be all the domestic issues like health care, auto emission standards, gun control, and climate change. And let's not forget, he's the biggest open borders Republican there is. Then running for president in 2008, he almost had Democrat Joe Lieberman become his VP nominee. Something he just recently said he regrets not doing, throwing a loyal Sarah Palin under the bus in the process. And during that campaign, he wouldn't have anyone on his staff say anything bad about his opponent, Barack Hussein Obama. You could say McCain gave us 8 years of the disastrous Obama presidency, which gave us a horrible Iran deal, crushing health care policy with Obamacare, and the list is endless. McCain built all of it. And now he goes after Trump, and he goes after him with a vengeance. This vengeful man, who is upset because Trump made an offhand comment about him, is willing to go against his own nation just to stab Trump in the back. Let's not forget the late-night thumbs down he gave on the Senate floor to stop the repeal of Obamacare, stabbing the nation in the back. And now with brain cancer and knowing he is near death, he says he is going to do whatever he wants, including putting the nation in danger by rejecting a qualified CIA nominee. Yes, McCain served his country ably in Vietnam, was a prisoner of war, and was a hero to me. But Benedict Arnold was also a great American war hero. And Benedict Arnold's name is now synonymous with traitor. He was wounded at the Battle of Saratoga, a battle that was one of the first major battles the Americans won. Benedict Arnold nearly died from his wounds. Had he died right there, Arnold would have gone down as one of the greatest American generals, and a hero that would be talked about in schools today. But Benedict Arnold lived. And he, like McCain, because he felt he'd been slighted by Washington, turned on his nation and became the biggest traitor in American history. John McCain is following the same exact path. He could have been a great hero, and now he's just a Demony of the people. I want people to understand that it's okay to be sad about John Benedict McShane. They don't have to worship him just because he served in Vietnam. What about the 6-year prison sentence for online posts against religion, transgender, race, sex, disability, age, religion, belief, pregnancy, maternity, and gender reassignment? How about adding being a political minority in San Francisco? Maybe we should pass a 6-year prison sentence in California for any online posts against political minorities like conservatives in California. How about that? Would that work for you? And the main question is, should medically impaired members of Congress be forced to retire?
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
34 minutes after the hour. Now, this saxophone piece is not being done by AI. This is rock and roll in its raw original state. And now Google has unleashed an AI voice that has set off an uncanny reaction, actually a horrifying reaction of people who have a soul and a sense of ethics, which, of course, Sundar Pichai and the others at Google apparently lack. These are people without souls. They're robots themselves, in the estimation of myself and others. It's a futuristic product from Google's developer, and they released it on Tuesday. Duplex, an experimental service that lets its voice-based digital assistant book appointments on its own. And Google doesn't even understand why the people are upset, and they demonstrated on stage. And the AI voice, the Google Assistant, spoke with a hair salon receptionist, even mimicking the ums and hms of human speech. And, of course, the robots at Google, that's everyone who works there, who have no ethics, no morals, no up, no down, laughed because they thought it was wonderful that they could trick people like this. Now, outside of the Google robots, critics were astounded, putting robots in conversations with humans without notifying people. And, of course, questions arise. Should artificial intelligence software that's smart enough to trick you be forced to be disclosed? Google has no answer yet because Google has no soul. Google has no ethics. Google has no morals. Google is run by robotic human beings, many of whom are foreigners who come from dictatorships, who are imposing a sort of technological dictatorship upon America. And yet there are those who are shocked. A man named Zepnep Tufiki, a professor and tech company critic, said it's horrifying. Silicon Valley is ethically lost, rudderless, and has not learned a thing. What else is new about Twitter and Google? So let's listen for a moment to Google Assistant making a haircut appointment. Well, we did that one earlier. Here is the Google Assistant answering a restaurant appointment, but it's strange because it's in a sort of a broken English Google Assistant, which I don't understand. Let's listen to it.
See, how may I help you?
Hi, I'd like to reserve a table for Wednesday the 7th.
For 7 people?
It's for 4 people.
4 people when? Today?
Next Wednesday at 6 p.m.
Oh, actually we reserve for like after like 5 people. For 4 people you can come.
How long is the wait usually to be seated?
For when, tomorrow or weekday or?
For next Wednesday, the 7th.
Oh, no, it's not too busy. You can come for 4 people, okay?
Oh, I gotcha. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Sounds like the woman who owns the restaurant I go to. She's no different than that. But anyway, the question is, the better one is the haircut appointment. Listen to how real this one is in clip 01 on the Savage Nation.
So how can I help you?
Hi, I'm calling to book a woman's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd.
Sure, give me 1 second.
That's a robot. See how happy
Sure,
they
what
are?
time are you looking for around?
At 12 p.m.
We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that
Robot.
is a 1:15.
Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.?
Woman.
Depending on what service
Robot.
she would like. What service is she looking for?
Just a woman's haircut for now.
Okay, we have
Right.
at 10 o'clock.
Robot.
10 a.m. is fine.
Okay, what's her first name?
The first name is Lisa.
Okay,
person.
perfect. So I will see
Robot.
Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
Now, of course, the robotic people who work for Google, who have no ethics and no morals generally, that's why they take that job, think it's wonderful to trick people into using a robot. But where will this lead is the question to ethicists. You think about the ramifications of this. A human assistant deceiving humans with software called Duplex. And the question is, where was it born? How old is it? What was it designed for? And where will it go? And these are predicaments I can't answer. Well, what's coming is even more interesting, because there's going to be machine learning to create texts, music, and video. They actually have programs that are created for online word processing. It's called Smart Compose technology, which will actually insert words and phrases based upon what you are typing. So if you get a dumb illiterate student, that dumb illiterate student can write part of the essay, the rest will be written by the Google program. Now, how is that going to help the literacy level of the world? Tell me. Don't you think it will create a nightmarish vision for us when you don't know what part of the work the students are writing themselves? If Smart Compose technology writes words and phrases for them, where will that lead this country? I don't know. I can pretty much figure it out. But if you look at the people who are pitching this, you'll see most of them are foreigners who came here on H-1B visas. They're not Americans. They have no sense of our values or ethics. They come from I would say I didn't mean terroristic. They come from well, let me use another word. They come from backgrounds where there are no such values as we have here. No First Amendment, no Second Amendment, no Third Amendment, no Fourth Amendment. And that is why tech companies hire these third worlders, because they come from backgrounds where there are no values. And that is why, for example, if I go on Twitter, I know that I'm being shadow blocked and shadow banned. I can see it because my readership is half of what it was a few months ago. There's no reason for it. The tweets are better. But they probably have a third worlder who sits there from some destitute, horrendous nation and blocks what I say. You say, well, that's fine. They can do it. It's not a public utility. Well, when does it become public utility? When will Trump force Google and Twitter to become public utilities where they cannot do that to conservatives whose voices they don't like? It's a bigger question, really, that relates to the media itself. Why should the San Francisco Chronicle not be declared a public utility since it's a monopoly? I mean, I can understand why newspapers are not declared public utilities, because there's usually some kind of competition in the market. But when you have a single newspaper in a market, as in San Francisco, and they refuse to talk about anything positive about conservatives such as myself, our accomplishments, our victories, they are violating our civil rights, in my estimation. But we can't do anything about it because they're not a public utility. So I think that we have to talk with the president and his team, the FCC and others, to turn newspapers like the Chronicle into a public utility, and Google into a public utility, and Twitter into a public utility. And I believe all of this will happen over the next 5 or 6 years. Once we get rid of the ambulance chasers and the Marxists in the media who are trying to destroy the presidency, he will be able to focus on making America a right again. He will be able to make the ship right again. As I've said to you many times, a bird needs 2 wings to fly. This country's been flying with 1 wing tied to the body of the bird. The left wing is flapping and the country is going in circles. It's time to unwrap the right wing of this country and let the bird fly straight, because a bird needs 2 wings to fly. Phone numbers here is 855-400-7282. There were some other questions that I raised today, which is, who is paying the stripper's ambulance chaser? It's a great article by Mark Penn on The Hill, in The Hill. And he asks, who exactly is paying Michael Avenatti? And is he a lawyer, an opposition researcher, a journalist, or a campaign operative? He wants to make the discussion all about where Michael Cohen, President Trump's personal attorney, got his money. But to have clean hands, Mr. Penn writes, Avenatti needs to come forward with exactly who is financing his operation, who his sources were for detailed banking information, and whether he really is an attorney solely representing Stormy Daniels or just using her as a cover to wage a political operation. From the beginning, he writes, this has been fishy. Daniels' previous lawyer advised her to stick to her agreements. In contrast, the pitbull Avenatti okayed her violating with impunity her non-disclosure agreement on 60 Minutes despite a binding arbitration agreement against her. She has acknowledged on Twitter that she is not paying for her lawyer. So who is? And did he indemnify her against all multi-million-dollar penalties? It took a long time and even a court battle to find out that the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee paid for the Fusion GPS dossier, a fact that was disclosed only after the damage was done, as former British spy and the dossier's compiler Christopher Steele had already created a vast echo chamber as though the material he was peddling had been verified in some way, which of course it never was. Now, Avenatti, the lawyer, is being allowed to repeat the same process, mixing truths with half-truths and evading accountability. And so they ask about this lawyer who is paying the stripper's ambulance chaser. He goes on, and he writes, Avenatti has been given a free, unfettered media perch on TV to spread his stuff without the networks forcing him to meet any disclosure requirements, saying that he is Stormy Daniels' attorney when someone else entirely is paying for this operation is not true disclosure that allows the viewer to evaluate the source and potential conflicts. And now he is being given deference as though he was a journalist with an interest in protecting unverified sources while he makes the most headline-grabbing pronouncements he can. Lawyers need to disclose the source of their evidence. He then writes, I have no idea if Cohen was on the up and up or was playing fast and loose. I wouldn't want my lawyer selling insights on me. But now we have gone from Trump-Russia collusion in the election to the Russians supposedly paying $130,000 after the election, a sum that President Trump definitely wasn't in need of, and yet this has spun hours of cable commentary. And if this is all a paid donor strategy to discredit Trump, it is backfiring. Pay attention to this paragraph. The more this ambulance chaser, Avenatti, and the stripper and Cohen blot out the Democratic message and the president is seen as making peace with North Korea, the latest CNN polls themselves show the Republicans are surging, and several polls show Trump's image rising the more they smear him. The more you peel back the onion, the more Cohen and Avenatti seem alike. Both fixers bending every rule they can get away with. Fairly or unfairly, Cohen is being put under the microscope, and we can rest assured that every payment in or out will be fully scrutinized by law enforcement. But Avenatti, the ambulance chaser, can't be given a pass on these issues. Americans are entitled to know just who this guy is, who is writing his checks, and whether he legally obtained his information. Remember, Avenatti was an opposition researcher who worked for none other than the disreputable Chicago Fixer. Remember him, who worked for Obama? My friends, that's what's going on in your country today. I'll be right back on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation. We covered a lot of ground today. You can read it all on michaelsavage.com. And I think the most important one is that you learn that it's okay to criticize a war hero who turns against his own country, comparing McShane to Benedict Arnold. Many of us are reluctant to say anything negative about a person in uniform, which is based on a good value system. Unfortunately, there are many cases of people who served ably in the military, some heroically, who later turned against their own country. This is new news. Rudy Giuliani has just resigned from the law firm over his many TV appearances. So apparently he overstepped himself in a certain way, and that's a big story that I hope does not lead to the fall of Rudy Giuliani. I'm not so sure he's that much longer going to be connected to the administration. I think he made a lot of missteps, mainly going on Wallbanger's show and criticizing, actually not criticizing, contradicting the president. I think he made a huge misstep as a lawyer, and I still think that he shouldn't have taken the fifth that he must have taken before the appearance. May have taken more than a fifth. He could have taken a quarter for all I know. Could have been a quarter, could have been an eighth. We don't know what he took. KSFO, Travis, I think you're going to be the last caller of the day. What's your topic, Travis? Thanks for calling.
Hey, Dr. Savage, long-time listener. I live in California, so we don't necessarily politically agree with everything, but I love how you tell stories, so I listen every day. Now, I do want to take a bit of exception about the artificial intelligence. I don't see the connection between the third world employees and the lack of morals, or how necessarily the Constitution comes into play. I mean, we use technology and computers to...
All right, let me answer that question because it's a controversial statement. Many third world employees come from countries where there is no freedom of speech, there is no First Amendment, and they then act like the little robotic fascists that these companies want them to act as, banning, shadow banning, and blocking people whose disagreements are manifest with the ownership of Twitter or ownership of Google. That's what I mean. They have no sense of values along the lines of our First Amendment or our Bill of Rights. They don't even know what those mean.
I think that's fair. It's more along the lines of the artificial intelligence, like computer-assisted drafting. You know, that's the field I work in. I'm able to do things using a computer that I could never get done in a day's work with my hands. Air traffic control.
Hold it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we should ban computers. I didn't say that. All I said is that Google introduced a voice that is that of a human, but it's actually a robot. And without disclosing it, people are freaking out on a level of the ethical questions.
I think it's a fair question. I think there's the robot's making hair appointments. You know, it's making you a reservation. I think that if...
I understand it's nothing now, but where could this go in the future? Let's use our imaginations.
Sure.
Let's say you have a cheating husband, and in a couple of years they have an app where you put in your voice, you talk into it for 10 minutes, and the robot, voice picks up your voice. It could say anything you want, and you program that to lie to your wife. What about that?
I think that's a fair question, but you know, a cheating husband's going to cheat. You know, there's apps now where you can fake your GPS on your phone, so it makes you look like you're at a basketball game when you're really at, you know.
I didn't even know that. My God.
Yeah.
They have that. They have that. You make believe you're at a basketball game. Oh, that's awful. I think that should be banned in Washington D.C. Don't you? All right. Well, look, these are interesting questions. Doors are opening. Doors are closing. The world is changing. Nothing remains the same. And that is the beauty of talk radio, because we change with the changing times. Go to michaelsavage.com, get the free newsletter 3 times a week, and enjoy yourself.
Stop listening to the bombastic loudmouths on the radio. To hell with them.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.